Right, good evening and welcome to Sidebar. My name is Ken Mijungu and this is where the conversation that has been going on throughout the week begins and ends tonight. We'll obviously be discussing a lot of issues that have been debated in the public domain. And of course, the election date has been announced, but the country remains as divided as ever. And I dare say right in the middle. And that is the basis of our conversation tonight. But first, before I even introduce my guests, let's take a look at the week in 60 seconds.
There must be full accountability for the August 8th election.
Ni kwa sababu walianguka kura. Now they are looking for a scapegoat.
Huyo ni karibu kama mtoto wangu. Lakivika jambo la kuongea jambo kama hiyo ameongea. Tumehuzunika na tumesikia uchungu.
Let's come together, and that is the message of the child, that we want to build bridges.
I think what is helpful is to be able to see from the entire scheme of preparations, what are the critical things that ought to be fixed.
On the election day, the stolen Kim's kits were allowed to continue operating on the Safaricom network.
I can tell you we are going to resist them. And if they have never seen a resistance in Parliament, they are provoking one.
All right, the East African country of Uganda, obviously in this region now, is a showstopper. We'll be discussing that at the tail end of this conversation. It's very important that we understand now that we have members of parliament also in the house. I take this opportunity to introduce them, beginning with Florence Kajuju. Florence Kajuju is a former member of parliament for Meru County. Thank you for coming. And we have John Mbadi. John Mbadi is the ODM chair, minority leader at the National Assembly, and he also joins us tonight. Thank you for coming. Abdikadir Mohamed Hussein is the advisor of the president on legislation and constitutional affairs or constitutional matters. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. And
we are keeping one empty seat here for one of our panelists who should have been joining us. That is Judy Pareno. She's a nominated senator, NASA, and I think by extension that is ODM. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin as soon as she joins us. We'll obviously be bringing her to the table. Let me begin with the lady, and that's Florence Kajuju. The state of the country, Florence. Today we know there was a meeting between the parties, the IABC, and obviously tomorrow they're beginning the conversation proper. But looking at how the IABC has been pushed to the corner to have this conversation, do you think it was necessary or it was something that was supposed to come out immediately after the court ruling?
Allow me, first of all, please to pass my condolences to the family of the late Principal Secretary Almawi, who passed on after an attack, and I can only pray that the family gets a divine strength to be able to take on that challenge that has happened. As to respond to your issue, I think it was necessary that the parties meet, the stakeholders. We've been having issues, each of the sides making demands here and there. That was necessary, and it should have happened as early as yesterday. And it is important that they were able to sit. I don't know the discussion that they've had, but I think going forward, IABC should even have more meetings with NASA and with Jubilee so that they can sort out all the issues that appear to be holding the parties back. Because what I know is that we must have an election on the 26th of October 2017. And the beginning of that election is when parties agree to sit down and be able to have a discussion and agree on the way forward.
All right, so you say we must have an election. I'd like to play sound bites from Parliament yesterday before I asked Abdi Kadir to comment on this. Take a listen.
There will be no election, Mr. Speaker, unless IABC is reformed. Mr. Speaker, unless our irreducible minimums are met, Mr. Speaker, no elections, Mr. Speaker. This country will not be held a lump sum by one person just because he wants to die or become in power, of holding power of this country. This man will not be head of state. He will never be called a head of state of a country known as Kenya. There will be no election, Mr. Speaker, unless IABC is reformed. Mr. Speaker, unless our irreducible minimums are met, Mr. Speaker, no elections, Mr. Speaker. This country will not be held a lump sum by one person just because he wants to die or become in power, of holding power of this country. This man will not be head of state. He will never be called a head of state of a country known as Kenya.
Right, if you look at where both parties, and it's deliberate that we took it across, that is Nasser and Jubilee, Junaid Mohammed and Minor Commander speaking, this is totally, they're speaking, giving reasons differently. Minor Commander's reason is not the same as Junaid's reason. I'd like to talk about Junaid's reason, but first respond to the fact that there's one side saying there'll be an election, and the other side saying we must hold an election because we cannot be held hostage by one person.
Thank you, Ken, and let me also join Florence in saying Paul to the family of former PS Mariam El Maawi. Let me also congratulate my friend Badi for his election as Member of Parliament and also for the leadership in Parliament. I think there's no problem with having a very heated competition. That is part of the politics in this country, and we as a country really enjoy our politics high octane. But I think we need to separate the basic minimums in terms of we need to have a country. There is a court that said we need to have an election. There is a constitution that says we need to do the election in 60 days. Obviously, if there are things to be done, we need to do them. But on the 60th day, on the 61st day, we'll still have a country. It's up to us to decide what kind of a country we'll have on the 61st day. And I think we have gone through elections as a country very many times. It's not the first one, it will not be the last one. We have gone through very heated presidential elections. So I think if we bring the temperatures down and deal with the reality, that is better for the country. I think we have debated both sides too many times. Most of the facts are known by Kenyans. We need to move forward as a country and hold those elections. And I personally believe the minimums exist. IABC did hold an election. We have had elections before. Petitions come in. So for example, the Honorable Wetangula had a petition against him. That succeeded. Nobody said immediately thereafter, let's disband the IABC. And I think the IABC has been disbanded before, or the electoral management body has been disbanded before. 9 years ago, I was in the house with Mbadi. Actually, I was in a room with Senator Orengo, Senator Wako, the late Senator Mutula, when we were discussing, Martha Karua, who was then Minister for Justice, when we were discussing the disbanding of the ECK. That was 9 years ago. And we even said that those who were holding office that time, it was illegal for them to hold any office.
Why was it necessary 9 years ago to disband the ECK?
Same complaints. We had the elections. We had 9 months or so ago. We also disbanded Isaac Hassan's commission.
Yes.
Now we want to disband. So my view is okay. It's the easy thing to do to say that Ken was the one handling this thing. If it didn't go well, let's kick him out. But I think history has shown that that really is not the answer.
Kicking them out is not the answer.
Or it's not the only answer.
Okay.
We have, our biggest problem is our politics. It is really not, in my opinion, our institutions or our laws. It's really the way our politics are structured. And we need to sit down and decide, do we want to have a country 60 days from now or the 61st day after the...
What does that depend on, Abikadi?
Us. It depends on Kenyans. It
You mean the politicians of the Kenyans?
Especially the non-politicians. Because
it depends on them.
Especially the non-politicians. Because the politicians, look, we are in silly season. When politics is called, the politicians grandstand, do brinkmanship, talk very loudly.
Okay.
It's now for the rest of society to decide. This country does not just belong to the politicians. It
belongs
also belongs to all of us.
Let me bring this to Mbadi. Do you believe the rest of Kenyans, especially non-politicians, are the ones who will determine if this country remains on after 60 days or not?
Thank you very much, Ken. Let me also join my colleagues in registering my condolences to the family of Maui. We are, as a country, mourning together with them, and we sympathize with them. I also want to say, Ken, that it is really refreshing to meet my friends. These are two great friends of mine. We were with Abdikadir in the 10th Parliament. Very good friend of mine. He was my chair of the CIUC, Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee, where we sat together, midwife in the current constitution. And also my friend Kajuju. It's nice to see her a second time since the August 8th election. And the other time we didn't even shake our hands properly like a funeral. Today at least we have that luxury. Having said that, let me say the following. Number one, I wanted to start from where the question that you asked Kajuju regarding the talks that were to take place today and which took place today. I wanted to say that my disappointment is with IABC. If IABC followed the law as was amended late last year and early this year, where we had put it in the law that there would be need to consult with the stakeholders in making important decisions, I think we would not be where we are. Before the August 8th election, if there were more consultations with the stakeholders, and of course the serious stakeholders in this electoral process is both NASA and Jubilee. We know there are other stakeholders, but those two important political groupings should have been involved. After the invalidation of the presidential election result, again, this consultation should have even continued with more intensity. But what we have seen is a bit of a letdown. IABC is now coming into this negotiating table when already the environment is polluted. Having said that, I wanted to now address your question whether this is in the hands of the rest of Kenyans or to some specific individual. As a country, I think I would want to agree with Abdikadir that we need to ask ourselves whether we are in Kenya because we want to be in Kenya or we are forced by circumstances to share a country. Because at times you find that the general support base of this country is not doing any good to the politics of this country. I would not blame the voters exclusively. I know the political class sometimes shape and direct the opinion, the political mood of the country. But I think as a country also we have a responsibility, right from the social media interactions to demonstrations that we conduct, and even some of the words that come from many of us, including political leaders. Recently you have seen from both sides, leaders coming out to actually insult the character of other important leaders of this country. And besides that, they are even insulting other communities, thereby exposing this country to near what we saw in 2007. I don't think it is very good for this country, and I think we have a responsibility as Kenyans. I know the politicians have a role to play. There is no way you can say that Kenyans can determine our destiny without our leaders, because they're already there and you cannot wish them away. They shape and direct the politics of the country. But as Kenyans, I think it is important that we also, at our individual levels, ask ourselves fundamental questions.
How comes then you can't agree with the party that wants to get this sorted out? You seldom agree on anything with the Jubilee party, especially in terms of how the 26th election will be conducted.
That is expected because we are in competition. That is expected. In terms of disagreeing, in my view, is expected. But how we disagree is what matters.
But it's grandstanding. It's not like you agree and give space for it. You disagree and stand. Yesterday you had a press conference, and at the end of it, when a journalist asked you a question, you said that's neither here nor there, because we're not even talking about it.
Yes, first of all, I don't know whether you're asking specifically to address the issue
of the IABC, yes.
Because you see, the questions that was being directed at me were not relevant to the issues that we canvassed, and I didn't want to dilute our press conference with other issues. You know, you, the media people. At times you bring, I've been here for a while, so I know how to deal with the media.
The issue very worse. The issue very worse. You refuse to answer questions about the meeting, and the minimum, the response, the journalist wanted your response to the letter that was issued inviting you for this meeting. You dismissed it. You said
that actually was a very unfair question, because I had addressed the demos which were taking place yesterday. And if you are going to ask me of a letter for a meeting, that is a question that you could direct elsewhere. And I think it was very unfair, because if I addressed that, it was going to be the subject of your media brief. And I didn't
you were dealing with the media.
So I was very, very careful on that.
But in such matters that are important, Florence, such as the election that is supposed to happen on the 26th, NASA is adamant it's not going to happen. Yes. Can't they find a common ground?
Actually, that is the most shocking bit, because NASA went to court and they challenged the results of the election where the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, had won. They were able to get orders that nullified the results of our president, and the court went further and said, well, you must hold elections within 60 days. The excitement that I saw with NASA was that they were happy because the president's election had been nullified. But then, on the same breath, they were not happy that they were told to hold elections within 60 days. So the big question I've been asking myself, even as I watch them demonstrating and having numerous press conferences. In fact, it looks like NTV, Citizen, KTN is the stronghold of NASA. That is where they get their votes. They're here to tell us if that is how they get their votes. But I'm just wondering now, instead of going out for rallies, talking to the people who are the voters, they're only making threats that we are going to demonstrate today, that we are going to evict Mr. Chiloba, the next day we are evicting Mr. Chebukati. I don't think that is the right way to go. Let them sit down with IABC. IABC has said it's ready, willing, and able to speak to them, all the partners in this process. IABC is a partner, Jubilee is a partner, NASA is a partner. Can't they sit down? The leadership. These are the people who are seeking for leadership. Where can they sit down with the stakeholders and be able to agree? So really, press conferences, if I can advise my senior in politics, press conferences will not bring votes. Let them do what President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto are doing, going to the people
but why would
and
they,
asking for votes.
Before I talk to Abdikadir, why would they go to talk to the people if at all they haven't obtained what they're looking for?
Honestly, they should know the court ordered for elections to be held within 60 days.
By the IBC?
By the IBC, as constituted.
As constituted. As constituted was not added in that judgment. I didn't hear it. But
I'm just telling you because I'm a lawyer. I have read that
judgment. I'm also a lawyer.
Oh, you're a lawyer. Then
So
you must know that the order by Justice Maraga was that elections must, actually, shall in law is mandatory.
Yes.
That elections must be held within 60 days.
Okay.
If that be the case.
Hold that thought, Florence. I'm coming back to you. I still want an explanation on that because I saw the judgment. I had the Maraga read the judgment, but there was no place he said as constituted. The first respondent shall hold an election in accordance to the Constitution. I'm coming back with that, but let me take a short break. When I come back, we'll start from that. First, we take a short break right here on Sidebar. Right, welcome back to Sidebar. My name is Ken Mijungu, and with me is Florence Kajuju, former Member of Parliament, Meru County. We have John Mbadi, the minority leader at the National Assembly, and we have Abdikadir Hussein Mohammed, who is the President's advisor, legal matters. Let me summarize it, legal, constitution, legal matters. Well, let me continue with Florence. There was nowhere the Supreme Court talked about the IBC as currently constituted. We have to be clear with that.
Yes,
There's nowhere.
I agree with you that it did not speak about as constituent, but when you read the judgment as it is, you get to understand the spirit and the letter of that judgment. The court knew that even if there was to be any change in IABC, it cannot happen within 60 days in terms of the commissioners. There is a process in which you remove commissioners from office, and it also addressed itself to the illegalities and irregularities that if indeed they felt there is any one person who was guilty of an offense, electoral offense, nothing would have stopped the court from ordering for investigations. That is why, in my own wisdom, I feel that it didn't have any issues in as far as the IBC continuing with elections as constituted.
I have had that debate here previously, whether anyone at the IBC should be investigated or not, or if the court found that anyone was culpable or not. So I'd not like to go into that debate. But aside from that, Abdikadir, in your mind, what is the position?
I think my problem with this issue is that we as a country are going at it the wrong way. I honestly believe we have the most expensive elections in the world per capita. That is not normal. We're not the richest country, we're not the largest country. There's no reason why we should have the most expensive elections. Number two, we have had the highest number of reforms of any country in that sector. Badi will tell you, Mheshimiwa will tell you the number of times electoral laws have been changed in this country. I remember when we were in the 10th Parliament, a few days to the election changing laws. I remember one particular statute we passed in one day to wake up former President Kibaki at night so that he could assent because we were running out of time. We had a commission headed by a South African judge and went through that commission and scrutinized our electoral processes.
That's Kriegler.
Kriegler.
Yes.
We set up, we kicked out the ECK, set up two separate institutions, one dealing with boundaries, one dealing with elections. Removed them and brought the IABC. We removed the Isaac Hassan-led IABC. So we have really gone, in most countries, elections are done by mid-level civil servants in the Ministry of Interior or local government. In the UK, for example, or in many countries, ballots are posted by post office. Imagine if we were having ballots coming through the post office.
But someone might argue that this is an argument that NASA has fronted, but I still want to ask you before I speak to Mbadi, what is wrong with reforming an institution until such a time that we have an institution that is credible?
I don't think it's possible, because the problem is not the institution. The problem is our politics. You see,
is it the politics or the people in it?
The people, if there are people who need to be reformed, it's the people in our politics. Okay. It is not the people in IABC, because if we remove the team that is there and brought another team, now today, for example, if we remove them, and really would that change much as far as that institution is concerned? Maybe the political temperatures will go a little bit, but I don't think we should change our lives because of political temperatures. I think we should change the political temperatures. I think we need to bring down the political temperature
first. All right. Yes. Do you agree, Mbadi?
First of all, let me start by addressing the issue that Honorable Florence addressed on the Supreme Court ruling regarding that the elections would be held within 60 days. That is not, we were not even told. That is in law. That is in the Constitution. So we knew even when we were going for this petition that should we succeed to have the presidential election annulled, that we would have election repeated within 60 days. Having said that, Florence failed to proceed with quoting the judgment. That the judgment of the Supreme Court did not end there, because you are accusing NASA of having celebrated the ruling but did not accept the 60 days. We didn't even have to accept it. It is there in law. But again, that same ruling went further and talked about how the election was supposed to be conducted. It is supposed to be conducted in accordance with the Constitution and the law. So if you hold election within 60 days without following the provisions of the Constitution and the law, you will have not complied to the court order as it was given. But again, talking about rallies, I want to tell my friend Florence that rallies add very little in this election that we are going for. This is a rematch. This is an election where people have already made up their mind. I wonder how many Kenyans are out there who voted on August 8th and are going to change their minds. But that is not to say that we have not been holding campaigns. It is, again, another propaganda from Jubilee side that NASA is not doing the campaigns. In fact, as a matter of fact, it is now that Jubilee is trying to hold rallies. The Jubilee changed their campaign strategy. They have been calling delegations to state houses both in Nairobi, Nakuru, and other places. NASA has held rallies in Narok, Kajiado, we've gone to Mombasa, we've gone to Western Kenya, we've gone to Nyanza. We have been in Nairobi more than Jubilee. So I don't know where this theory is coming from, that NASA has not been in the campaign trail. Far from it. The only thing is that we are also, apart from campaigning and energizing our bases and telling our people to come out and vote on the date of voting, if it happens on 26th, there is also the bit that we want the playing field to be level.
And that's your interest, and that's the interest of NASA.
Because this, we had an election on August 8th. And as NASA, what is concerning us now is we don't want to win election and the following day someone goes to court and have our win annulled. Actually, that is our biggest concern, and I don't know why this does not concern Jubilee if they are serious that they want to win presidency. You should be concerned that if the moment you win, then that win should be upheld. And that is why we are insisting that before we go to election, the Supreme Court judgment must be complied with. Remember, Maraga said that they will not hesitate to nullify and void another election if it is not conducted in accordance to the law. Do we want to do that? While we were told very clearly that there were irregularities and illegalities.
And that has caused a lot of heat, Abdikadir, from your boss, straight from the president.
Yes.
He is so much infuriated about those sentiments. If you listen to the way he spoke about that sentiment from Maraga, he's not entirely happy with it.
Yes.
As the advisor, do you tell him to comply with court orders?
I am also not happy with Justice Maraga's statement, especially on the last item my friend Bandi talked about, or is it you who talked about, which was when he was saying, if this happens, we will also.
That's Mbadi.
Yes, Mbadi. Yeah. We will go do the same things. I think it was beneath the court to go to that level. That was politics. Now the court was playing. The court is our highest court. It's our apex court. We delivered ourselves there. The president himself did an affidavit to give the evidence. We have no problem with his authority. So he didn't have to really chest thump and say we will do X or Y or Z. So, but coming back to the earlier issue, what was required of the president was the most important decision after the decision of the court was for the president to accept. And that was choice. That was choice. The president had choice to say yes or no. He followed the law. He accepted the constitution, and even though he did not agree with the court, he said, I will respect it. I will abide. The rest, he's human. Buddy will tell you, and Florence, politics is a very, very difficult business in this country, and it's a very emotional business. And not just for him, but he has a large base, which will be extremely disappointed if they don't see him feel as much as they are feeling on these matters. But coming back to the earlier issues, is it up to the parties, really? Is it up to NASA or Jubilee to decide how we're going forward? If you are going for exams, now we're going to do exams soon, and you ask the candidates to set the rules, to decide whether they'll go for exams or not, to decide which teacher should set the exams, it's not natural. That is why we have an independent institution to deal with this stuff.
So it should be left to the IABC, according to you?
It should be left to the IABC. The IABC should sort, if it has any issues, sort itself out.
Okay.
You can point out issues, but because you cannot really have our cake and eat it. We cannot ask them to be independent, to be firm, and to be efficient, and then we come around and really are the people who are causing for it to...
On your analogy, because I see somebody wants to respond, but on your analogy alone, Supreme Court Lady Justice Philomena Mwino also used an analogy that you're yet to respond to, and now that you bring this up, she said if you have to reach a mathematical answer, you must show how you got to it. And you insist numbers are important, but they insist that you're not showing how you got the numbers.
Yes. Okay, good point. Now, my analysis of the Supreme Court process is that they got the formula wrong and they got the answer wrong.
Okay.
Now, but coming back to what you said, the answer to the question, the Supreme Court raised legitimate questions about IABC. So when they say, we asked IABC to do this, why didn't IABC do this? Those were legitimate questions. Did those questions raise doubts about issues with IABC? Yes, they did. The important thing is they then jump from there to the conclusion that, okay,
because there are these questions.
Kajuju then should go back to election because there are these questions, which is not natural. In our legal process, we say he who pledges, he who alleges proves. If you are the one who is alleging that my shirt is blue, then it's up to you to
it's
prove.
Blue.
So our problem with the judgment is, number one, as Justice Ojwang said, there was no evidence led by the party that was making the allegations.
But I'm very reluctant to go that way, because you know as well as I know that that is for academic, and we can't quote a dissenting judgment here.
No, but to be fair to the you asked me about the judgment.
Yes.
It was not me who brought it up.
Yes.
I actually was not hoping to discuss
yes.
But now that you brought it up, our issues with it are, we will definitely obey it, and that's a law as far as
regardless of what the president and deputy president says on the campaign trail.
Regardless of what anybody says, we'll obey the court order. But do we have major issue with it? Absolutely, we have major issues with it, and we can go for 1 hour on why we have major issues with it.
Especially the last part. Let me talk to Florence. The last part, before I talk about, you want to respond to that? The time to, yes, because Florence needs to respond. We need to go to something else.
I just wanted to quickly touch on some of the issues that my friend Abdikadir has raised. You know, when the judges talked about that they would nullify election again if it is done, they were actually not speaking to Jubilee. I don't know why Jubilee is getting this impression that they were being addressed. The judges were addressing IABC as the first respondent who they were giving the order to conduct another election. And they were telling them, you bungled this election. If you bungle it again, regardless of who wins, we will again nullify it. So it was touching Jubilee and touching NASA. Whoever wins, if it is not, if we don't win in a legal and procedural manner, it will still be nullified. So I think the election would still be voided. So I think it is wrong to assume that the judges were actually addressing Jubilee. They were not. That is my understanding. Number two is the issue of who is supposed to decide. I said previously that really we are, this is not just an ordinary election. And the laws are there. We amended the Elections Act to make it mandatory or a requirement that IABC will not work in isolation. Because for an election to be seen, to be transparent, to be accountable, you must involve the players. It is not that the players are coming to direct you, but please tell us what you are planning to do. In fact, if you remember immediately after the Supreme Court judgment, what we asked of IABC, please tell us the roadmap. We wanted to know that this is what the judges have determined on, that this is what they have said. How are you going to correct this message beginning from today to the date of election, before even you pronounce yourself on the date of election? What did we hear from IABC? The next thing we heard from the IABC was October 17th. And we asked them, how will you arrive at that particular date? Now, my last comment is regarding the issue that, again, Abdikadir raised regarding how the judgment was made, that they got the question wrong and got the answer wrong. My understanding is that the Supreme Court judges said IABC missed an opportunity. They squandered an opportunity. There were allegations brought by NASA regarding how the elections were bungled. And they were specific. They mentioned what we felt went wrong. IABC did not make an attempt to rebut those allegations. And so you cannot come, you know, a lawyer, a judge can find you killing, and so God forbid, murdering Abdikadir. And he goes to court, and if you're taken to court and the evidence is not properly presented before the judge.
Unless you do it in front of the judge in court.
Yes, unless you do it in front of the judge in court, in which case then the action will be taken.
All right.
Now, in this case, I think instead of accusing the Supreme Court, my feeling is that we need to ask ourselves, and I ask myself when Jubilee lawyers sit back, and my friend Abdikadir is a very sharp lawyer, I know, and he was not involved in this case, but he followed the case. I don't know whether when you get back to you are somewhere, you close the door and you're alone, you are convinced that your lawyers did a good job in court. I think, to be honest, I'm not a lawyer, but I have a very good understanding of law because I've been in this for long. I'm convinced your lawyers they were actually disaster.
Yeah, but she...
I have to talk to yes, because I wanted a final word. I started with her. I wanted her final word. So respond to Mbadi. Then she tells me, would you think, in the face of everything that we're discussing, that there's possibility to have an election on the 26th? But you respond, then she responds, then we go to the next issue.
I have looked at this from a lawyer's point of view, and what the judgment has done is completely messed up with our electoral processes. It has completely changed the standards. So, for example, in every country in the world, the numbers do matter. because you can't really have an election and say, I mean, the craziest thing any Supreme Court judge dealing with a presidential election or any election petition could say is that numbers don't matter. I mean, you can't go crazier than that. Numbers don't matter. So what matters? The Supreme Court judgment was won by 4-2.
Okay.
If there were 4 on this other side, it would have been lost, because there'd be 4-4, and you would have to do what was the situation before the case. So numbers do matter. They matter in the Supreme Court, they matter in election petition, they matter in elections, because elections are first and foremost about numbers. Okay. Number 2, that's called the quantitative test, the quantity of the votes. There's a second test called the qualitative test, which is the quality of the election. Did you abide by the laws? Did you abide by the spirit of the Constitution? Did you hold the elections in a free and fair manner? That is the quality of the election. Now, in almost every country that has an election law, there's a section that says, and my friend Buddy was there when we wrote it, irrespective of which law was broken. Listen to me. Irrespective of which law was broken, we should not cancel the election unless the impact of those breaches was such that it substantively
affected the election.
Now, what our court said was it separated the 2 tests. There was an or there in our section 83. Our act, our section on that is 83. The UK has a similar act. Canadians have a similar act. Almost every country has a similar act. Now, what the court said is separate it, deal with one independently, as if. So let's go ahead and say, I don't know whether my friend Buddy has an election petition against him, but let's go to the...
Thank God I don't.
So let's go to any election where there's an election petition. And you say, it doesn't matter the quantity, the quality is critical. Tell me which election you will not have some quality issues, some impurities. And that is natural. We're human beings. Okay. And every law understands that. So finally, it dealt with, again, flipping the burden of proof, it dealt with a whole lot of issues that I have problems with. So we'll abide by the law because that's our legal system. We will criticize the judgment. We will go for the election because, as you said, or I think it was somebody who said we must go for the elections based on the judgment, which said strict compliance with the law and the Constitution. Now let me ask you, Ken. I'm sorry, I'm taking a bit long. What is the legal process for removing the IABC commissioners?
The commissioners. Yeah.
How long does that take?
I know.
If we were to implement it strictly in accordance with the Constitution, how is it feasible to say? Because unlike my friend Buddy, when the NASA team came out of the court, they did not say, please go and sort yourself out. They said, get out of office. And in fact, my friend, our court said we're going to get the UN to
do the election. And even that has been resisted. Florence, final word on this. There will be an election, there won't be an election?
There will be an election.
There will be an election.
Yes, because as my friend Honorable Badia said, actually it's not just the judgment that told us there must be an election and it must be done as per the Constitution. Even if there wasn't any judgment, an election must be conducted as per the Constitution.
Okay.
The Constitution is the booklet that guides us, with or without the judgment. And let me also say that you cannot shift the burden of proof. Honorable Buddy talks about our lawyers having been a disaster. To me, our lawyers did the best that they could. But what matters is the appreciation of the submissions of the lawyers by the courts. Did the judges appreciate the submissions? Did they shift the burden to IABC? Did the petitioner, who is NASA in this case, prove his case? According to me, NASA did not prove its case, and the judges did not consider the most important factors in making that decision. So let us agree that instead of raising temperatures, if Honorable Raila is a true statesman, as he claims to be, why would you go shouting that every day we are not going to have an election? Why would you go shouting that I saw Honorable Millie Odhiambo saying Chiloba must go? Why would you demand just a CEO of IABC that he must go for you to go for an election? Why would you have to hold demonstrations, bring young people on the streets? And you don't see Honorable Raila, you don't see Honorable Kalonzo, you don't see Honorable Wetangula or Honorable Mudavadi on the streets. You didn't see them yesterday. They just brought young guys from Kibera. So we are saying these are the people who are raising the temperatures in this country. Let us all go out there and campaign. They are saying their votes are already enough. So they'll continue with press conferences. Our president will continue talking to the people. They will get the votes. This time we want to get 70 plus 1.
Okay. Mbadi, I think a respond. There will be no election. Just briefly, we have to move.
No, just allow me 2 or 3 minutes. Numbers matter.
Thank you.
But I want to say that both numbers and processes matter.
That's okay.
That is my understanding, because it really, you remember, I'm sure, Abdikadir, you remember that in 1988, there was an election in this country. True. The Q voted. And numbers were announced. But the truth is that the processes leading to those numbers is not something to be proud of. There was a time in this country when district commissioners were actually the returning officers, and votes could be counted, and Jungu gets 10,000, I get 2,000, and a call is to be placed to the president to seek his permission to announce Mijungu, and if he says it is Mbadi, Mbadi would be announced as the winner with 10,000, and my 2,000 becomes your 2,000. There were numbers, but the processes leading to those numbers were questionable. The same with today. The numbers matter, but how you get the numbers matter. And now, the issue of removing commissioners, and that's why we are very careful. We are not asking for the removal of commissioners. But we are saying, make changes to the secretariat. And Mheshimiwa Abdikadir knows this very well. He actually chaired the committee where we were coming up with the laws, the electoral laws. We made amendments in the 10th Parliament where we gave a lot of powers to the secretariat.
And I thought we have actually, down. So
when we gave too much powers to the secretariat, that same power is what we are using today. We are saying Chiloba had more powers in managing the affairs of IABC. In fact, the election is driven and run by the secretariat. I think that is what Kenyans need to know. Those who are asking us why we are going for Chiloba and not any other person, and not the commissioners, should understand that the role of the secretariat in the electoral process in this country is much more than the commissioners. The commissioners are ceremonial, so to speak. I want to go ahead and say that really Raila Odinga is a statesman. This is someone who conceded defeat in 1997 when he lost. In 2007, even though we were convinced, and we are still convinced, that Raila won, we still accepted to share power. In 2013, when we were, after the election, we went to Supreme Court and we lost the case, and we graciously, Raila Odinga came out and spoke to the whole world and said, Kenya is bigger than Raila Odinga. We will move forward. I don't want to affect the economy of this country. And that is it.
Just like
we moved on.
This
time round, we were asked by the same Jubilee. In fact, the president and his deputy made this a song between 11th and 14th. Go to court. We went to court. Court determined in our favor. What have we done? What we are asking is now, please, IBC, don't conduct a sham election. We will not allow you to conduct. And you asked me a question that I'm ending with.
Yes. Will there be an election on the 26th?
On 26th.
Oh, yes.
It is in the hands of IBC.
Okay.
If they want election to be held on 26th, it will be held. But if they are going to take us around,
it will not be
I'm telling
held.
you, we will not participate in another illegality and irregularity in the name of an election.
All right, there's several things coming out of the issue whether there'll be an election on the 26th or not. The other question that Kenyans are asking, and I'd like you to ventilate on this, and I'll play a soundbite from the AG, Professor Githu Muigai, and then I will ask a question about this, because the concern of Kenyans is after 60 days, what happens? But first, let's play this soundbite.
The legitimacy and the constitutional legitimacy of the government cannot be questioned because it is preserved by the Constitution itself. There is no void, there is no lacuna, and there is no room for the creation of any other form of government or authority.
Right, that stemmed from the fact that NASA has been talking about a caretaker government. They've been talking about Article 134, a temporary president. They've been talking about the fact that the election was nullified under Article 140, and they've been talking about the fact that the IABC has gone ahead to gazette 2 candidates. And the question has been, is this a continuing election, or this is a fresh election as ordered by the Supreme Court? But that's not even my question. My question is, at the end of the 60 days, Abdikadir, is it possible that we don't have an election? And what you're not saying there that the Attorney General said is that we can go as long as we can with this, so long as we have an election. It's not a must that we have an election in 60 days. And his interpretation was that we have entered into an election window. So the Constitution shields us from that. So it means that President Uhuru Kenyatta remains the substantive president until another election is held.
Yes.
That is what NASA disagrees with. They're saying after 60 days, President Uhuru Kenyatta does not become president. Let me hear from you first. After 60 days, what happens to this country?
You know, I'm very surprised. On the 8th, we had an election. A few weeks before the 8th, we didn't have anybody querying what happens if we don't have elections on the 8th. We have held elections on time in this country every 5 years. In fact, the date of the second, the first Tuesday, the Tuesday of the second week of August, that was done when we were passing the Constitution 7 years earlier. So I don't know why we are fixated on assuming the worst and then preparing for that worst and confusing the country. There is a date set by the IABC. The Honorable body is in Parliament. The same IABC is the one that set, the same Constitution is the one that set that date. He and the rest of the country went for the elections. So my first issue is, let us focus on delivering an election. Let us not confuse ourselves with what if, number one. Number two, because we have done elections. We have, our energies are better served at delivering an election than preparing for what happens if we don't. Number two, the Constitution has very clear provisions. A president is in office from the time he or she is sworn in to the time the next president is sworn in. It's a very clear provision. I will invite you to look at our Hansard in Naivasha when we're doing that. And the Honorable Wetangula was very much a member of our committee when we were in Naivasha. It's a very clear provision. Why would you want to struggle to see whether that one being sworn in to the next swearing in includes these 60 days? Our constitutional provisions are very clear. If the election is nullified, you go for a fresh election in 60 days. If for any other issue, because you're dealing with a larger issue now, the president is in office from being sworn in to the next. So what I would have expected if I was in NASA's shoes, for example, if I had taken somebody to court on an election petition, is I would be the one pushing for the elections to be held. Especially if I know that in the event that the elections are not held, this good person will still be in office.
Okay.
Now it really beats logic to say, I want you out, but I might not go for the election, or if you don't go for this election, some other structure comes up. We don't have another structure. We have the president. He will only get out when there is a valid election and when there is somebody validly elected out of the...
So worst case scenario, election does not happen within 60 days. It's possible with the grandstanding,
yes, so,
it will not happen.
So we have the legislature in place. We have both the Senate and the National Assembly, and Honorable Mbadi is a senior member of the National Assembly. We have the judiciary in place, very much so. That's the second arm of government, no problem there. We have our county entities in place, county governors, county legislatures, all in place. And we have a president sitting who will hold office until a new one is given.
It takes 3 years?
No time limit, so long as there's no election held. That's why we should focus on holding the election. Let me ask you a question. We have held elections when we were poorer, when we had more difficult circumstances. We have delivered things on time. Buddy will tell you, when we were in Bunge, we used to have deadlines, and you would have Parliament working through the night. We can deliver this. We must deliver this. We should not be focusing on
what if.
Thank you, Ken. I think I'm a bit worried by the NASA people because they seem to disagree on anything and everything. If you look at since that judgment was delivered, they've decided to just refuse everything. They refuse. They don't want IABC. They don't want the printing firm. They don't want to attend Parliament sessions. They don't want even the latest victim is Safaricom. Yet they have a pay bill where they have been asking for money. So they don't want the services of Safaricom. So you're asking, what do they want? They don't want elections on 26th October. But what I'm saying is this.
They've clarified that.
They should read Article 134 when the powers of incumbency kick in, And they should also read very carefully Article 142. Honorable Badi prides himself as having had the best battery of lawyers who represented NASA. Then they should be able to explain in simple terms to Honorable Raila what Article 142 says. Because Article 142 recognizes President Uhuru Kenyatta as the president unless and until he has his hands over power or is sworn in again for after the next election. So they can take their time, honestly, yes, but the president remains the president. They were complaining that the president now doesn't have any powers. But when some of the bodyguards of Honorable Raila said, alleged to have been taken away, they started saying it's the president, is the only commander-in-chief who has the power to remove guns from. Suddenly he has the power. When the next minute they are saying he's a temporary president, there's nothing he can do. So I don't know why they are really excited about all these situations.
Let's listen to what Mbadi said regarding the security.
We want to tell Uhuru Kenyatta, who is exercising the authority of the president as a temporary incumbent president, that he has a duty. He has a duty to protect this country. That is the single most important responsibility as president. We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to be scared into submission. We are ready, and I want to borrow words from Justice Maraga, that we are ready to pay any price for this. So if the government thinks they are going to intimidate us, let them be warned that we are not ready, we are not about to give in. And on the security of our leaders, Kenyans are ready. We are ready to provide security to Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka. So even if they take their security, we will provide that security. But we want to just urge the president not to plunge this country into chaos. Kenyans are not ready to see the country burning. And I see Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy slowly and systematically driving this country to the point that we may not have Kenya tomorrow.
All right, security of VVIPs. I'd like to talk about that, but I was just putting what you're saying in context, then I give Mbadi to respond. Were you done explaining?
No, just a bit. I'm just happy that he said what he has said, and I've said that they should be able to read Article 134 and 142. Honorable Mbadi has just said that the president is a temporary president. I've just told him that his lawyers should be able to explain to him what Article 142 says. The president is the president. He has all the powers until the first vote is cast on the 26th of October. That is when the incumbency kicks in. So as of now, let them know that the president is in control and is in charge of this country. No cause for alarm.
The same constitution says that there shall be a presidential election every 5 years for a 2-year term. Explain that to me also.
The same constitution says, and there is no conflict, that the president remains the president from the date that he is sworn in until the day that he gives over power to another president or he is sworn in again for a fresh term. So there's no lacuna, and that's what the AG was trying to say.
All right. Mbadi, those were your words. You don't have to repeat them.
No, I will not repeat them.
Yes.
You know, first I saw Gideon Muigai speak, and that now was not Attorney General. That to me was a politician. And you see, Gideon was in Parliament for some time as Attorney General when Attorney General's office was, Attorney General was a member of Parliament. Legitimacy must be questioned. It is our right to question legitimacy anytime, whether we are wrong or right, we must. But let me put it this way, that we have never doubted that Uhuru Kenyatta is the president of Kenya. Today, he is. Even when we failed to attend the parliament, where he was going to give his speech to the National Assembly and the Senate joint sitting, we know he's the president exercising temporary powers of incumbency. And the only reason why we did not want to be part to it was that there was the spirit of the Constitution, why why a president was to address the first sitting of Parliament. the Constitution assumed that we would have a new president in place who would set the agenda for legislative agenda for 5 years. But here is a president who has barely 30 days in office, and you are going to listen to him give which agenda? So we were like, why do you attend and listen to a temporary incumbent president who is basically going to campaign for his re-election? Having said that, I don't know whether my friends and their lawyers, when we quote provisions of the Constitution, I think it's important that we read the Constitution in its entirety. The truth is that the president is enjoying temporary incumbency until another president is sworn in. That's a fact. The election should be held in 60 days. The Constitution has left a kind of lacuna, so to speak. I hear them say there is no lacuna as to whether after 60 days he should still continue enjoying temporary incumbency. But you know, when you talk that he would be president like forever, the way you speak, if there is no election after 60 days, he would be president forever. I want to ask myself, the drafters of the Constitution, is that what they had in mind? And I will tell you no. Go to Article 146 of the Constitution. Article 146 of the Constitution talks about how the office of the president can be vacant. And it says the president can die, the president can resign, or Article 144 and 145. And Article 144 is removal from office by National Assembly if, say, probably you are physically disabled or something like that, to the extent that now you cannot perform your functions. Article 145 talks about impeachment of the president. But then there is a bit that they don't want to read, that any other circumstance as provided in the Constitution. Now, what is this other circumstance? This other circumstance, and by the way, it says, if this happens, another presidential election will be held within 90 days, during which time someone will act. I have heard you talk about caretaker. I've never mentioned caretaker. And I don't know whether that has come from NASA official position. We have never talked about caretaker government. It is individual people talking about caretaker. But the truth is that the Constitution has contemplated other possibilities of that office being vacant. And by the way, my friends should accept it, that if we reach the 60th day without election in this country, the truth is Uhuru is not the president. The office of the presidency will be vacant, whether you like it or not. Yes. And if you insist in retaining power, it will be like any other warlord in this continent. And we've seen many of them. The president will the President Uhuru Kenyatta will change quickly from being the president to a warlord who does not want to be.
I know he wants to respond, but before he responds, let me ask you, we have a fresh election on the 8th of August, second Tuesday, right? It goes through, then there's an election that has been nullified, right? And then they are sent back to a fresh election. If at all we had 4 or 5 candidates running for the president in that fresh election, right? And then there is no winner, what happens? There's no clear winner. There's no person who gets 50% plus 1. What happens?
If there's no winner, you go back again.
You go back. So you can go for another election until you get someone who gets 50 plus 1. And then there's a...
Yes, but that is assuming within the 60 days, there is an election.
There's an election.
And then that election does not provide a clear winner.
My question there is, the Constitution has opened this, so that if there is an election that there's no clear winner, this can proceed until a clear winner is obtained. Then what stops us from waiting for this period that the Constitution has opened for us until we get a clear winner of presidency?
No, what I'm saying, Ken, if you listen to me very well, is that there must be an election within 60 days. For us to have another election on the basis of
the election that comes within the 60 days.
Within. So if you conduct election, even on the 60th day, and someone has not, if you had more candidates, there is none who garners 50% plus 1, then we will
continue
go for it.
Looking
and
for
the
that
Constitution provides for the number of days that it takes. But if there isn't an election, you cannot assume that we will go for another era. In that case, then the office of the president will be vacant.
So let me assure my friend Bandi that the office is not vacant. If he wants to come into the office, he has to go to the people and get elected. But let me also assure him, because I think he talked about something important earlier, that I have worked with the president. He knows him very well. He is the last person who will plunge this country into any. The president loves this country. He has no interest in causing anything that's going to cause trouble to the country. Let me come to I actually honestly didn't want us to go to the legal technicalities on this matter, but now that we have gone to the deep end as far as the legal technicalities are concerned, let me mention a few things. Number one, for the benefit of those what exactly are the powers that we are calling temporary incumbency? Without even going into who is temporary or who is not. Temporary incumbency doesn't just include the president. It also includes sometimes when the deputy president, whoever is the deputy president, is acting in that office. And the powers it removes from the office are extremely limited to just three conditions. Number one, power of mercy. In other words, when the president wants to exercise power of mercy and forgive you. Number two, honors and state awards. So EGH. Number three, appointments of a limited number of state officers. And as far as the cabinet is concerned, firings. And the issue is very simple. It is to stop somebody who is holding it temporarily from making such appointments that makes it difficult for whoever is coming in for the longer term to change those things. So if you are a deputy president holding temporarily, you don't want to change, or if you are a president holding temporarily, you don't want to change for the new coming president.
Would you explain what happened during ICC hearings when President Uhuru Kenyatta...
There you go.
Yes,
so that is now temporary incumbency. And which also leads to, this is not the first time the president is obeying court orders. He obeyed court orders in the ICC, he's obeyed court orders now. Now, fresh elections. Fresh elections do not actually mean start from the scratch. They don't mean that, because the term fresh normally would mean that. But in this case, the Supreme Court in 2013, following a request from the petitioner, the Honorable Raila Odinga, clarified what were the conditions for holding a fresh election. And they said a number of things, which included, by the way, the issue you just asked right now. The issue, because they seem to...
of two candidates.
The gazetting of two candidates,
Yes.
that came from there. It's not in the Act, it's not in the Constitution, it's from that Supreme Court ruling.
Yes.
Number two, if you read that ruling, they seem to just suggest that in this fresh election, actually, it's first past the post. That's something most lawyers and most Kenyans don't figure out. That in the second instant, it's actually first past the post. So you will not have a situation where we don't have somebody winning. That is the court's view. That is not my commentary on it. I honestly believe going forward, instead of somersaulting on what happens and what doesn't happen, we as a country have held elections before. We have held elections for every position. Just a few weeks ago, we held elections for 6 different elections. Now, where are the products of those elections? Let me take you to MCS, for example. 99% of MCS seats, there is no election petition, which means there are 99%.
There are 134 cases of petitions of MCS.
And there are 1,450 elective seats. 1%. Less than 1%. Less than 1%. Now, if those...
That cannot, 134 against 1,000 something, looks like 10%.
But it's 1%.
Okay.
Let's go to, look, we have MPs, we have senators. Most of the lawyers of the petitioner are members of the National Assembly and the Senate. They are sitting. They have no issues with this IABC having conducted their elections.
34 petitions.
34 petitions,
yes, in the Senate.
Out
of 47.
95% of the petitions that the IEBC held in the last time, the IEBC won. The Isaac Hassan IEBC, 95% of the court petitions. Even the 5% they lost, the people they said won majority of the reruns.
My
view is this, Ken, as a country, we need to come down and calm down.
Okay.
The IEBC can hold the election. Even as is currently constituted,
a credible election.
It has held election that delivered my friend Badi.
That's what
it has held an election that delivered my friend.
Don't want them to do. But before I forget, I just want a brief answer because I need to give them an opportunity, and we have to do a last topic and conclude. When the president came out to say that if they thought I am president-elect, sasa mimi ni president, sitting president, Did he mean that?
Now,
just a short answer. Did he mean he's the substantive president?
Yes, yes, yes. The
he
president,
meant it.
The president is a substantive president
Then
because
if he
he is
meant
not
that,
president-elect. You see, he was
if
president-elect from... Yes.
If he meant that, then it means there was no election of the president. That's why he went back to be the substantive president.
Now, that's an important legal question.
Yes.
Because the legal question that needs a court to determine is this. When you say you have invalidated the elections completely,
what happens to the incumbent?
What do you mean in terms of the powers of the president? Because the election, the temporary incumbency, as far as an election president presupposes, you are a president-elect. So, for example, when we had President Kibaki was finishing his term. He was president-elect, and he was the president who was incumbent, and the president-elect was President Uhuru.
Okay.
What were their positions? One was a temporary incumbent, the other one was a president-elect. So the assumption is that the temporary incumbent and the president-elect go together when it's an elected president.
Okay. Dan, I think we need to conclude. Do you want to respond on this? I know you share the same position.
Yeah, can I?
Yes, you can, because...
I thought he shares the same position with me also.
No. Let me just address the issue of elect and substantive and the president. I think the president was right to some extent, but he also, I think, failed to appreciate the law. First, he was no longer a president-elect, but still was enjoying the temporary incumbency powers. So really, in terms of powers, there was no difference. So I don't know why he was bragging that now he's not president-elect. Because in terms of powers, really, it was the same, whether he was elect or not elect, until another president is sworn in, he would still exercise the powers of temporary incumbency. But where I don't agree with Honorable Abdikadir is where he says that the assumption for the temporary incumbency was that there would be president-elect. No. If in
the
fact,
other situations,
the
I told you, like the deputy president, if he's elected...
The Constitution is clear that until you have another president, which again, there are provisions in law that there could have been failure to garner 50% plus one, you are not elect. You'd still go for a rerun and then an election. But I want... Mheshimiwa Abdikadir, I just want you to exercise your mind to Article 146 that I talked about.
Yeah.
You know, under which other circumstance, if you have mentioned death, you mentioned resignation, you've mentioned removal by Parliament, National Assembly, initiating the process, and you've talked about impeachment, and the Constitution still goes ahead to say that there is a possibility that we can have vacancy in the office of the president.
So
you see,
let me tell you what my view.
There is a possibility that we can have vacancy, and that is what you don't want to accept.
So let me tell you what my view is, Ken, and with much respect to my good friend. I think, you see, we are really struggling to look for, like, putting a square peg in a round peg in a square hole. Why are we so concerned about? I have even heard the craziest one that under our constitution, it says the fresh elections must be held in every constituency. Section 130, it says the fresh elections must be held in. So I've had the crazy notion that then is a requirement that every constituency there must be an election, and if there are some violence in one of the constituencies and some elections are not held in some of the polling stations, that nullifies the election. I mean, how far can you stretch this stuff?
Not really nullifies the election, but
that is a ground for invalidation of the election,
because the election results should be declared with all the 290 constituency in results.
Let me tell you why that's completely absurd. What the quantitative tests are two: 50% plus 1, 24 counties, which is a majority of the counties.
Okay.
If that was another test, and wouldn't we then say plus at least a few votes in every? But let me just finish. Yes.
It doesn't explain.
But let me just.
Why it doesn't explain? Okay,
let me finish. You see, if you are looking for some crazy notion to explain these things, what is the straightforward answer? The Constitution provides. Actually, the first thing is, I'll ask Mbadi, go look at our Hansard. Look at what we were talking about when we were actually stating that section. Don't look for what this other issue is, and therefore it must be this situation where 60 days elections are not held. It doesn't fit. It's really torturing the Constitution for...
The response I'm getting from my brother Abdikadir It's like you are saying that Article 138 of the Constitution is there by mistake.
It is not.
Yeah, because you see, and then the next question I would ask is, why is it that at the Bomas of Kenya, IABC could not declare a president until they received results from all the 291 constituencies? Not even 90. 91 constituencies. It's because
it's
the
a national
Constitution
election.
once expects you to conduct election in 290 constituencies. You see, if for this election to be the election of the Republic of Kenya, you cannot conduct an election in 2 particular regions, 3 regions, 4 regions, and purport that because those regions have a population that when you look at it, it is a representative of the country, then that is an election. The Constitution
which I have no problem.
Yes.
The problem I have is, convoluting the Constitution to look for some crazy way of fitting what you want.
But is this crazy?
This is a national election. A national election should be held across the country. We as a country don't have compulsory elections. We don't have a minimum number of votes you must. It is 50% plus 1 of the votes cast. So if 30% of our voting population voted, so long as 50% plus 1 have given the president-elect, and so long as you have 24 of the counties, we will go. So certain countries...
Let me just ask a question. So then, what Honorable Kadir is saying is that we can have IABC collude with one political party.
But why do you assume
when we are applying the law, we have to make assumptions. Actually, when you are drafting law, you have to cure mischief. So now, if IABC decides today that we are going to conduct elections, but we exclude, for example, Coast and Northeastern, just listen to my question. Then they don't even take ballot boxes to those regions and say, well, looking at the numbers, Mbadi has garnered 50% plus 1. He has won in 24 counties. Even though election was not conducted at the coast and it doesn't say in the Constitution it has to. That to me is wrong. Actually,
so let me flip that argument.
Can we hear?
I think first of all, I want to correct Mheshimiwa Badi and tell him that the president does not brag. So the issue of the president was bragging that he's now a president from the status of president-elect. He was not bragging. The president was stating a fact, and that is the law. What the problem with the Nazarites, as I hear them being called, is that they like misrepresenting issues, and especially the law, and more so the Constitution. When Honorable Badi is trying to state his situation, he tries to avoid totally Article 142 that gives the president powers until the day that he is sworn in. What they're trying to fish, actually they are on a fishing expedition.
They're trying to find a reason.
Ignoring all the other facts and trying to say there could be a situation where we can make Honorable Raila a president, even if it's for a minute.
What could be that any other?
Any other circumstance.
Like which one?
You said that you're a lawyer, and I believe you are. Whenever we are drafting pleadings in court, we always claim what we are asking the court to give us, damages for loss of life, blah, 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 and any other relief. But what is most important is that the court grants you 1, 2, 3. But in the unlikely event that it feels within its discretion that it can grant me any other relief, then it can.
So this any other
circumstance is not the caretaker government or the nusumukate that they are looking for. It can never happen. The president is bound by Article 142. He has to hold that power. He has to protect this country until another president or he is sworn in as the president of this country.
Can allow me to react?
They don't have another choice.
I appreciate very much Article 142 of the Constitution. But I also want to let you know that Article 142 talks about how president holds office until another one comes in. But there are other articles following that.
Not any other.
Including the article that talks about how that office can be vacant. And that is why I have taken you to this particular article. And I've told you that that office can be vacant by someone dying in office, someone resigning. There is Article 144. and 145 of the Constitution, following the Article 142.
But
now, the Article 144, there is no conflict. What I'm saying is that Article 146 had foreseen something.
So
and this, what is that it has foreseen is what I don't see you people wanting to appreciate. And my final comment on it is this, that really what we were discussing here has nothing to do with the Nusumkati. Because what I have said is that this particular article talks about 90 days. That if there is a vacancy contemplated in law, then we would have an election within the 90 days. Contrary to what the Jubilee would want to...
I think we'll not agree on this point.
What Jubilee wants to do is to pretend actually they're deceiving themselves that we can have a life president.
No one is talking about a life president.
Because you see, what you are trying to tell us, what they're telling us is that if after this date, Uhuru will continue and can continue until another August.
Let me tell you, this discussion has really helped me to understand the mind of the NASA people. That their refusal to say that we're going to have elections is they're looking at Article 146 and any other. So that is where they are trying. That is where they are trying to see.
This is an idle
It's just a threat that is not supported by the law.
It's absolutely true that our constitution does not envisage a life president. That is why we have a two-term presidential process, and which we don't intend to change. That is why the president is very happily campaigning. And on the election date, if he is defeated, that's the end of his term. He has put forward that. But he's not intending to resign. So the issues that lawfully would have removed him, those will not have. They're important, but they're not there.
In this
they're
case,
not present.
I'd like you to answer briefly one question on Article 132, on the promulgation of the National Assembly.
Okay.
Initially, before the court annulled this election, the dates had been set. The swearing in was to be on the 12th. What was the hurry? The president promulgating Parliament using Article 132. And as Mbadi said, the Constitution envisioned a situation where there's a fresh election, everyone comes in. So that president is sworn in with the other people, the Parliament. So if today, case scenario, Raila Odinga wins the election on the 26th, does he have powers? What does he do with Article 142 at all?
Okay, so excellent question. Now, that first sitting serves two purposes. Number one, it serves what you have said, which is what Honorable Mbadi had said earlier, which is that the president, the new president, is laying out his legislative agenda for the House. That is important, is correct. The second limb is, it is the trigger for the start of the parliamentary session of this new parliament. It's actually the switch that switches on the start of the parliamentary session.
But don't forget that Parliament's calendar is no longer controlled by the executive.
True, it is not controlled. It's actually a 5-year term. It starts and ends. But it's compulsory that the president comes and addresses the first sitting of the fresh parliament. So what the president was intending was two issues. Number one, he has a right to come and address Parliament at any time. Number two, he wants the parliamentary session to start so that while the executive is in flux waiting for the election, the houses of Parliament can actually start their business.
So what happens if at all the 26th election there's a new president? That's the answer I want.
Now that president comes, Parliament is moving on, but that president can come and now lay his legislative agenda
afresh. So Article 132 can be executed twice.
If you remember, if you read the president's speech, he was not talking about a legislative agenda. He never mentioned bills that are going to be passed. He was dealing with the national issues, and he was congratulating his good people.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we end, there's an issue that we have to comment about. The issue of age limit debate in Uganda, just briefly. It's been acrimonious. We've seen the kind of drama. I'll start with the lady again. Someone said that will never happen in Kenya. It doesn't have. Its time is gone.
Actually, I'm happy that our constitution only gives our presidents 2 terms without the age issue. So that does not affect us. When I served in the 11th Parliament,
it prescribes the minimum age.
Yes, the minimum, not maximum,
Yes.
which is good enough. So I served in the 11th Parliament as Chair of Regional Integration, and that deals with the East African community. And of course, we used to look at Uganda as one of the countries that really we should be able to look up to. And of course, the president, Museveni. If you look at the history of Uganda, with the Idi Amin and all the other presidents, the former presidents, you'd appreciate what President Museveni has done so far. But now I'm not very happy. I'm not sure that that is the way to go, especially what has been happening in Parliament the last 2 days. I know we fight, and they always pour water on us as part of their legislative agenda, but that was an extreme.
Okay.
What happened in Uganda was extreme, and I want to believe that at a certain point in time, a president must accept that a time has come. So much as Uganda is a friendly country, I wouldn't want to talk so much against what they are doing, but I think the constitution should be respected as it is.
Okay.
You know, there's this question, Ken, that you asked.
You're going to no, we really need to add my directions. No, make it really brief, because we have to end.
You know, first, for me, it is simple.
On Article 132?
Yes.
Okay.
You see, if a new president comes in, the same constitution says the president can address parliament any other time that he feels like. I wanted to make that clear. But again, you asked why the president was in a hurry. I think the answer is simple. The president wanted to demonstrate to the international community that Kenya is stable, there is nothing wrong, I'm in charge, we are moving on. And so parliament is there and we're moving on. I think that's the message he was trying to pass. My friend here, we really used to quote Article 259 of the Constitution, that while interpreting this Constitution, we should do it in a way that promotes its values, principles, and so that is what I thought you would advise the President to hold his house kidogo, so that he doesn't go to that. But anyway, let me go now to Uganda case. I think Ugandans have been living a lie for quite some time. A lie that a country is stable, that because, you know, and I understand where Uganda has come from. Really, it was terrible for Uganda. Ken, you're detracting a bit attention. No, I wanted to say that Uganda, you know, have been where they are because of the history. Uganda went through a lot of period that was really no one would be happy about, the Idi Amin era and all that. So when they got Museveni, they thought this was probably an angel that has been sent from heaven to come and save us. And for a long time, Ugandans have not realized that democracy is very important, that you need to open the democratic space in a country for it to move forward. And now they are realizing that it is too late, and probably, and this is where African leaders get it wrong, that you squander the goodwill that you have to the extent that you may end up leaving office very badly. The way I see Uganda moving, if it is not contained, and that is again where I blame African leaders, they don't arrest situations when they start occurring. We need, as Africa, and especially neighbors to this country, to remind Museveni that there is a limit you can stretch people's patience. Okay. If it passes that limit, you may lose a country. And I see this direction. In fact, I doubt whether there's anywhere, even India has had its own share of such squabbles. Yeah. I don't think it has reached this level. This is too physical. This is too... actually, these guys, if they had guns, I'm sure someone would have lost his or her life. But the most sad thing is the way I saw them handling women. I know women are also leaders, but this is really, really looking horrible when you find a woman being beaten by men. It is strong and it must be condemned in no uncertain terms.
Okay. So Ken, because of the office I work in, my comments are mine. They're not statements from the office or any other entity in government. Now, as a country, I think if we only stop to look at our neighbors, or the continent we are in, we would really count our blessings, so to speak. We would know that we live in a country where the democratic space, the democratic institutions, and the standards we hold for ourselves are extremely high. Of course, sometimes if you looked at our democracy, it's so unruly that you wonder, maybe are we taking this too far? But any day, we would, I am sure, Mbadi agrees with me, it is better to be a politician in this country, even in these times when we are at each other's necks, than any of the countries surrounding us, or any other country in the region, in the continent for that matter.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you very much, because we had another topic to talk about, but I won't be allowed, the Chan fiasco. You know, it's an embarrassment to this country. And that's a topic for another day, but I want to take this opportunity to thank you very much. You want to discuss Chan? It's a big issue, it's an embarrassment to the country, but it's a topic for the other day. Florence Kajuji, thank you very much for coming and staying late at night to share with us your perspective. John Mbadi, thank you very much. Minority Leader, National Assembly, and Abdikadir Mohammed Hussein. Thank you for coming. And of course, you for watching and for keeping it until midnight. Thank you very much. My name is Ken Mijungo. Enjoy the rest of your evening and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.